yesterday. Am I out of balance from that? It was not an out of balance move for me because I'm in a creative space and I'm in my zone. So I didn't feel imbalanced. I actually felt very centered and focused and able to actually get through it. But if we understand that balance is a feeling of centeredness and peacefulness, now you can begin to identify what your body is telling you. Am I out of balance? Am I in balance? Am I out of balance or am I in alignment? Incompletions will pull us off center, so they steal that feeling of peace and centeredness from us. So it's very essential that we identify our incompletions and work consistently to eliminate them. And the way we eliminate them is to become aware of where the bumps are in our life and in our business, whether that's process, whether that's beliefs. Bumps can be found everywhere. But we become aware of those incompletions, and then we learn to eliminate those incompletions by creating flow. Again, we'll get more into that in a little bit. So when we focus on achieving completions, we open the energy, and this is where we do feel more balance. We feel a greater flow and success in life. So it's very important that we identify where we're getting those intuitive hits on what's not working in our life. Where are those bumps? Identifying your incompletions. So now I want you to really consider this as you're considering where are my incompletions? Because again, they create chaos, but look at all the directions they created: mental, emotional, relational, and spatial clutter. So this is one of the reasons I love teaching about efficiency and order and organization, because for me, I'm so affected by a lack of process or a lack of order that my energy is really off when I don't pay attention to that. And when my energy is off, I'm not performing well. I'm not feeling expansive. I'm not feeling engaged. So to keep this in check and awareness, to learn this awareness is so important. So to identify your incompletions, we can certainly observe it by looking at what's not checked off of your checklist, your to-do lists, right? But we really need to be checking in with our feelings. That's where we're going to find the most critical incompletions that might be happening in our life. That to-do list tends to be when I don't get my to-do list done every day and I've overcommitted, that's a bummer, and I don't like bringing today into tomorrow. But the tasks are different than the actual feeling. The task is, it's there to demonstrate something's undone, but our feelings are demonstrating something even deeper. Oh, our body tells us when we are experiencing an incompletion of that depth and magnitude. Very important. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the term resistance. So incompletions frequently exist because of resistance. What is resistance?
It's knowing that you need to do it, but you're
Putting it off. Delay, 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 right? Do you think that's trying to tell you something? If you shine a light on that, there's an unconscious reason that needs to be brought into your awareness of why that's happening, right? So when you experience resistance, that's your body will let you know, hey, there's something that you are putting off that you need to handle. There's a reason, though, we're not handling it. So we'll talk about that. So resistance, though, is both a barrier as well as a teacher, because resistance, have you ever heard the analogy of the seed and the soil with resistance? Okay, to put some texture to that, a seed, when it pushes through the soil, what is it doing? This little tiny seed buried in the dirt, and by the time it perks up and peeks over the ground, what has it done? What's happened to that seed? What's that?
It's grown.
It's grown. It's opened. It's living. It's alive. It's pulling nutrients from the dirt to grow. So if we liken resistance to the soil and that we are the seed, to embrace resistance, to embrace the challenges, to embrace the edgy, uncomfortable things that are presented to us all the time, sometimes every day. There's something that shows up that that doesn't feel good, I don't like that. Or, oh, I have to do this, but I just I can't force myself to get there. We need to remember that we're aware that we're in a state of resistance at that moment. But resistance is a positive thing because it does refine who we are. And also, one of the greatest, I will just share a quick personal story. One of the greatest resistances that I've experienced recently was in March with the death of my father. Now, he and I were not very close, but I am the baby of the family, and we did repair and have a beautiful relationship, probably the last 15 years of his life. That experience of navigating grief and managing all the things that happens in that space completely blew my heart wide open. It blew my heart wide open, but guess who it blew it open towards? Me, myself. I finally saw the importance of self-compassion. I finally saw how important it is for me to appreciate my own power, my own beauty, my own skill, my own life. That was what the death of my father taught me. And so someone could think, well, that is a terrible, huge pile of dirt to try to rise through. But I feel like I literally became a different human because of that experience. And it took me a few months to get through it. But that is a really great example of resistance is there to serve us. Everything is here to serve us. We have to allow ourselves to push through. And that's why I'm saying we have to make the unconscious conscious. So some negatives of resistance would be the avoidance of that growth. When we resist and we're trying to avoid discomfort, but in that same space, we're also avoiding growth. Our stress increases the more we delay. The more we delay something, the worse it gets. We just need to rip the Band-Aid off and dive in. Super edgy, super uncomfortable. But the stagnation, this is one of my greatest fears, I think, in life, is to be stagnant. I don't want to feel stagnant. I want to feel like I'm just expansive and growing all the time. So this is another reason why this topic has been so important to me in my personal life, of recognizing resistance is an opportunity to grow, and I'm going to lean into it. I'm not going to run away from it. Do I do that perfectly every single time? Absolutely not. Sometimes I need to remind myself, oh, this is what's happening. But I always find myself here because it's about the practice of it. It's about the practice of seeing that and walking through it. The positives of resistance is refinement and strength, right? And we just talked about that seed pushing through. You do have to dig really deep. You have to build your resilience. You can't be afraid of that, right? It does help us become stronger. Clarity through effort. This is another huge thing. When I was reframing my coaching business, I had a coach who shared with me, Darice, you need to stop thinking of yourself as a productivity coach of a coaching practice, and you need to start seeing yourself as the CEO of a coaching organization. And in that moment, I went, whoa. And then I went, I'm like, what does that mean that I'm gonna have to do? I'm like, oh, okay, but I was ready, right? I was ready. And all of us can relate to this moment where we realize, I have to lean in, because quite honestly, I can't go back. I would die in a job. I have to grow bigger. I have to be stronger. I have to see myself bigger than I am. Someone else does. Thank God for coaches. I am one and I love them. I'm grateful for mine. Transformation is another positive of resistance. When we finally break through that barrier of fear, when we break through that barrier, that's where the transformation happens. We really don't experience transformation when we're just letting life happen and we're ignoring this beautiful range of low and high emotions that are trying to show us the path to walk down. We become and emerge stronger, wiser, more capable when we overcome resistance. And wow, I am feeling that right now, big time. I am feeling that breakthrough, and it's exhilarating. It's wonderful to be able to experience that. So, embracing resistance, seeing it as not as something to avoid, but instead as a challenge to embrace. So that's the invitation for you today on resistance. So the other side of resistance, when we finally do break through, our weight is lifted, the path ahead seems clearer, we are more focused, and one thing I am really hyper aware of is free to give my energy attention where I want it to go. When I'm resisting something and I'm not looking at it because I don't want to deal with it, guess where all my energy is actually going? Because I think I'm over here, but all my energy is actually over here, right? Because we're pushing so hard against it, it's actually receiving more energy. So when we open up the flow of our life, we can be more present to the people, circumstances, and events that we want to be present to. And that's a really, really big one. We're no longer pulled in multiple directions by things that are left undone. Nothing's nagging in the back of our mind. We feel more empowered and at ease, and we can restore harmony in our lives and allowing us to flow effortlessly. So the other side of resistance might seem dark, looming, and awful, but the truth is on the other side of it, it's bright and beautiful, and it's a gift for us to break through. I had my very first mentor in my life, who I still cherish her so deeply. She formed my mind so specifically around this, but she used to tell me, Darice, you are a butterfly. You are the butterfly. And I didn't understand at the time. I was 20 something when she said this to me. And she said, you were constantly cocooning and busting through. Cocooning and busting through. And I told her, I'm so tired of that. Can't I just have some stillness? I don't want to be growing and busting through all the time. But I learned to accept that this is who I am. And I still am that way all these years later, and I'm 54. So it has to be true. That cocooning and busting through, the other side of resistance is beautiful. Okay, so the other thing about resistance is flow is what's existing on the other side. When we find flow, we remove the obstacles that create a start-stop energy. Now, what do I mean by a start-stop energy? What do I mean by that?
Start up goals and then all of a sudden you just lose interest or...
Yeah, so diving into something, maybe even writing a business plan or a list of goals for the quarter, and then not executing the plan. Yeah, that is a start-stop energy. Perfect example. What's another example of start-stop energy?
Cleaning out your closets and then never throwing it.
That is it. Yes, and there it is, like the start-stop energy leading to what? Incompletions. And then incompletions create energy drains. It's so simple to see when it's illuminated for us, right? I want you to think about your work day for just a moment, because we are going to start bouncing into some practical applications for business. What about your work day? What are the start-stop energies you bump into with your work day? Yes.
I get buried in emails. Like I'll start
Okay.
looking at emails, but then I'm like, oh, I only have 50 more to look at, right? and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I have to go do a tour, or whatever I have to do. So it's start, stop.
Yes. That's a perfect example, because now you're talking about a time frame and a process for that time frame. And when that process or time frame gets interrupted with something else, and now your energy has to go a different direction, there's your incompletion, and it just doesn't feel good. So learning to become hyper aware of where we're experiencing start-stop energy. I have 9 principles that I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation today that will help you eliminate start-stop energy, because for me, what I have found in my personal life, which is, I just love talking about this and teaching it, because for me, I already know that the dishes down in the sink are going to interrupt my ability to focus up on the second floor of my house. I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to embrace it. I know that's who I am. That's how I am. And so the very first thing I'm going to make sure is done are those dishes, if I know that I have to go focus for 6 hours up in my office. So that's an example of knowing where your start-stop energy is. And sorry, Anthony, I just touched that. And then I just touched it again telling you about it, so sorry about that. But knowing where those start-stop energies happen, and then being able to put reinforcements in place to prevent it from happening.
What if it's your primary relationship?
Yeah.
That's gotta be,
It's part of it, Anthony.
tactful.
It does. It has to be tactful. That's correct. But
And I'm not an expert in design choices.
is that what the current conversation is about? Design choices?
I get interrupted, bombarded constantly with design choices that I have no clue how to
Are you talking about from your primary relationship?
Yeah.
You,
And I can't tell her no.
but you can help her understand why you may not be helpful in that conversation.
Doesn't help.
Well, and that actually, and there's your practitioner holding space opportunity right there, honey. Hold that space. Hold that space.
Faster goes away.
Well, I'll tell you what though, and we did talk about, I think it was before you walked in the room, but just so you know, like we did talk about relationships create incompletions all the time. So you that's a little bump that you and she are going to have to work through. But it's done through honesty and communication, right? I love you. Thank you.
Real world.
Real world stuff. So achieving completions and experiencing more flow, I am going to let you know that starting with your business is a great way to practice this concept of feeling for incompletions, creating solutions and process, principles and practices. And then as you practice that, you can start applying it to your life as well. But because we're in our business so constantly, this is such a great playground to practice completions, practicing getting to completions. So we want to minimize incompletions and maximize flow. How do we do that? We build a strong foundation of structural integrity into our business and our life. And we do this through process, time management, organization, habit stacking, and prioritization. And all 5 of those things could be branched off and explained there could be 5 more things branching off of each one of those 5 things, right? But this is where we get started. Habit stacking, yes, it's a term that, and forgive me, I don't remember the author's name, but it's the Atomic Habits book. And he talks about habit stacking, and I highly recommend the book because it actually creates more flow. It teaches you how to, for example, if you have a hard time remembering to feed the dog when you're making your coffee. Instead of making your coffee, going off somewhere for an hour and then forgetting to feed the dog. That's one of my examples. That's one of my little habit stacking tricks. But yes, habit stacking is very effective. Yes, Atomic Habits. So today, as we're wrapping things up, and I do want to check the time. When is my hard stop time?
9:30.
Oh, perfect. We're great on time. So this is a phrase that I've coined for my business clients that has been an incredibly helpful tool. The idea of the business practice. And I'm going to, and this is one of those little ideas that I want to have you unfold it with me. So on one hand of the business practice, we have our organization and process. And on the other hand of our business practice, we have our habits and inspired action. So when we are committed to walking through life with both ends of that business practice moving forward, magical things happen. We become more self-aware, we get more done, we learn how to do less, but get more accomplished with less steps. So the business practice of organization and process on one hand, habits and inspired action on the other, that is the business practice. So on the organization and process side, this is speaking to your habitual ways of working. I am committed to consistent engagement with my business systems and my process flows. So do you see what I mean by habitual way of working? I have business systems and process flows, and I am committed to the habitual use of being in those systems and flows because I know it supports me to go from A to Z and get things done, and it eliminates incompletions. habitual ways of being, I'm committed to living higher standards every day, continually strengthening my success habits and taking inspired action. So this is you being a conscious business owner, recognizing that there are certain things that I need to do every day to move my business forward, to create flow, to avoid incompletions, to get to completions, and then I'm a more grounded, stable person, and I'm a happier person. So that is all encompassing in the business practice itself. So in infusing your business practice with balance and mastery, what I'm going to present to you right now is a little, this is about the infusing balance piece, redefining success. I want to redefine success for you. And then I also want to offer you 9 principles of self-management. And the self-management principles, processes, and practices are what is going to infuse your day, your life, and your business with a greater sense of completion and a greater sense of empowerment. So in redefining success, if I were to tell you, hey, listen, I want you to implement, as your coach, I want you to implement calling 25 people a week. And we part ways, and your week begins, and you get on the phone, and you only get to 10. Well, I was supposed to call 25. I only got to 10. In your mind, what was success? Was it hitting 25? Or was it hitting 10? Or was it engaging in the process to begin with at all? You see what I mean? So we are so hard on ourselves. We think that success means I do this one thing correctly 100% of the time. And I'm going to let you know that that is living in a fantasy world. Now you can do that 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 weeks, whatever. But if you are doing it from a state of resistance and pushing through, it's not sustainable. You won't sustain an activity that you're uncomfortable doing, right? So the idea of redefining success is to execute the majority of the time. The majority of the time. What's the majority of the time? What percentage is that?
80.
80? Okay. Any other guesses?
51.
Ting, 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 51. And that's the grace. That is the grace that we can give ourselves, because life happens. And if you're trying to get to 25 calls and 1 week you do 10 and 1 week you do 15 and 1 week you do 25 and the next week the idea here is that you're executing the majority of the time, right? It's not about the perfection. It's about the fact that you're stepping into the process. And magical things happen. I love my 51% conversation because it just gives you, like, right, can you feel that? Like, oh, okay, I can give myself permission to execute the majority of the time. And you will tip the scale on 51%. You absolutely will. So here's coming in now are our 9 principles. So principle number 1, I mentioned the 9 principles of self-management. The first one being give yourself to yourself first before giving yourself away. Let's talk about what that means to you. What does that mean? Giving yourself to yourself first.
Put your oxygen mask on before you take care of yourself.
Put your oxygen mask on. When I heard that, I don't know how, like 15 years ago, I'm like, that is such a brilliant analogy because everyone can understand that oxygen mask conversation. Put your own on so you can be helpful to others, right? Now, for the longest time, I thought that this meant, okay, I have to do all my self-care stuff in the morning before I start work. Well, I am a mother at the time with 2 small children, single mom, working a full-time job plus, right? I was failing at that. I was failing at giving myself to myself first before I give myself away. However, as I grew up a little bit, I realized what this actually means to me. It's about if I'm at my desk working and I'm thirsty, I'm going to stop working and I'm going to find some water. If I recognize I'm hungry, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to eat something. So it's not about getting everything done all at one time in the course of your day. It's about prioritizing yourself to make sure that your needs are taken care of so you can take care of the other things that you need to do and the people that are around you. So this is a really big principle for self-management. The second principle, anchoring a strong mindset. Now this is my absolute favorite thing that I do every day because I am entirely addicted to YouTube, to podcasts, to audiobooks. I love learning. I probably listen to 4 or 5 hours of content every day, just listening, not watching, just listening. So anchoring a strong mindset, we want to read and listen and stay inspired. And when I am feeling that clunk of being off, I go straight to something that's going to inspire me. I don't let myself linger in that space for very long. The longer you linger there, the longer you linger there, right? So being vulnerable, reaching higher, sharing challenges and successes with your colleagues, coaches, mentors, family, and friends. We don't do enough of this. We feel like we're on an island and alone so many times, right? That's why we join associations. That's why we join chambers. We want to be connected with people. And also at the same time, it's hard to be vulnerable even in that space of connection. So letting people know, listen, I want to achieve something new. I need to find someone to help me do that. That's that vulnerability of letting people know this is what you're up to and the help that you need. And then your community gathers around and assists you. Developing a higher degree of self-appreciation. That is another thing that anchoring that strong mindset does. I am a very spiritual person, and I'm a spiritual life coach to those clients who resonate with that conversation. But every day when I wake up, I anchor myself right into the divine. There is a prayer, there is an acknowledgement of the beauty and the nature around me, and that I'm part of all of that. When I do that with consistency, well, not even consistent, if I do that in the morning, my day just flows better, right? When I forget to do it or I don't make time for it, I carry a different energy in me. So developing a higher degree of self-appreciation and your connectedness to the world around you is so important. Okay, we're good on that. I don't want to move that slide until you're done. Thank you. Oh, wait, we're not done. Being in gratitude. Gratitude does, in fact, shift your energy. Why does that happen? Why does gratitude shift our energy? Yeah, we're focusing on the positive instead of the negative. Is anyone familiar with Abraham Hicks in this room by chance? Abraham Hicks? Okay. Well, Abraham Hicks teaches about being in gratitude and staying in the feeling space for at least 17 seconds. In that 17 seconds, you actually begin, because it's not about I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. It's about feeling the gratitude. Feeling the gratitude. It's not the box to check. It's the feeling that anchors you into a stronger mindset and helps you to shift your energy. Okay, principle number 3, the invitation to always run your business like a business. Oh, do you operate by feeling? Or do you operate by discipline? And again, 51% of the time, let's remember the new version of success. Are you interested or are you committed? You have to ask yourself these questions in the space of your business. Because if you are operating by feeling instead of discipline, what's happening is you will get these results that take you right like this. And guess what forms around all that? A bunch of incompletions. The list just stacks and stacks and stacks. Having discipline, Dan Millman said, discipline brings freedom. Discipline brings freedom, and that's really, really true. Principle number 4, and by the way, anyone, as we're going through these, feel free, we've got some time, so if anyone would like to share, has something to contribute, I'd encourage you to do that. Principle number 4 is opening the energy flow of cleaning and clearing. So this is where Anthony and I have a little giggle with each other, because I very much believe and know that as within, so without, our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. So if our outer world, if we're in the midst of chaos, we've got chaos going on inside of us. And also, when our inner world is in a state of chaos, our outer world becomes chaotic as well. So in my business coaching, I teach the idea of making sure that energetically our space surrounding us is inviting, and we want to step into it and be there, that it supports us. So if you were to pretend that you were at the door of this office looking in, and you know that you're going to sit right down there next to that X-Acto knife, how would that make you feel? Is it inviting you? What is it doing?
Overwhelming you.
It's possibly overwhelming. Now, what else is it doing? Go beyond the overwhelm, the immediate, I'm overwhelmed.
I have to clean it up before I get started.
I have to clean it up before I get started, so there's a stop-start, okay, and then?
See, for me, I would be, this is just me, for me, it would be like, oh my God, how are they in their home? Are they this disorganized? Are they this? You know, to me, that bothers me too. It's like, get it organized, like, looking at what you're doing.
So let me ask you a question. Now that's important because the invitation was, this is your office, you're looking in. So now take that a little bit further, because you're right where I'm looking for you to be. This is your office looking in, and you're saying to yourself,
Well, for me, it was like, I better get home and clean my house because I don't want to do the same.
yeah. So and the point is, there's a story. There's a story.
People actually like to work on that.
My husband, my dear friend, is one of them. I want to die.
I worked in the office, and the secretary goes and cleans up the office, and the boss is like, I knew exactly where everything was, and now it's...
Yeah. But you know what's so interesting about that? So the stories that we so the self-judgment, right? There's like stuff starts happening inside of us. And then even in that, so I want to jump to that for just a moment, because even when someone says, I thrive in chaos, I can still say, you will thrive more without it. You'll thrive more without it. And the other piece to that, my husband is a high D on the DISC test. So if any of you are familiar with the DISC test, high D is a driver. And so he doesn't deal with details. He needs somebody else to do that. However, there's nobody else doing that. So his chaos remains around him. And what he really needs to do is someone else to pick up those small details. He still has not yet invited me to do that, which I'm okay with that now. I have my own office at home. But he would thrive more without the chaos. So
To still pick up after him then?
his office is the only place in the house that was like, that I just am like, not going in there. But he's a brilliant man, but he just, there's a certain mindset that doesn't need the same way that someone else does, which is why I asked the question, how many of you are affected versus how many of you are not affected by incompletions? That it's very telling right there, yeah. So by the way, when you clean it up, this is what you get. You get a happy Anthony.
That was in 2009.
Uh-huh. That's right. It was in 2009.
So,
Uh-huh. I think Anthony has greatly simplified his life to avoid, things like this. But the idea is that, there's a freedom in this. You can breathe, a sense of breathing, right? It's just so powerful. Okay, principle number 5, the non-negotiables. I definitely want to invite you to take a click on this, and then we're going to wrap up here in about 4 minutes. So the non-negotiables, these are the things that I do every day, regardless of time, regardless of energy, and regardless of emotion. In other words, these are the things I do every workday, regardless of what time it is, what my energy level is, and how I feel about it. This is the difference of building your business through discipline and building your business through emotion. So this is a very significant principle. Now I will let you know that here are your daily non-negotiables, and I'll put all these on the screen at the same time. The most essential daily non-negotiables for any business owner or sales professional is calls and connections and closing the circles. And what happens is we tend to create so much momentum that we don't give our space space at the end of the day to close the open circles and not bring today into tomorrow. If you practiced this, your entire business, your entire income would change, because you are giving space to close the circles, which means creating what? Completions, right? Principle number 6, creating and maintain structural integrity. This is all just about making sure that you have systems in place, clear processes in order. We talked about the little bumps that we go up against sometimes. If there's a bump in my filing system, then I don't have a place to put a particular paper to file it away. I need to create a solution for that, so the next time that bump shows up, I don't have a bump. It's just already taken care of. So it seems small, but it's huge. It's huge. Principle 7, mastering prioritization. There are so many things we have to prioritize: calls, tasks, projects, paper and email interruptions. I become hyper exceptional, I'm gonna say, at avoiding distraction. I work in smaller segments of time and will check my phone or my email more frequently, instead of working in these longer segments of time and then having things pile up. Whatever your business requires of you, pay attention to what that might look like. It might be the opposite for you than me, but making sure we're mastering prioritization. Focusing on completions, principle number 8. So we've already, obviously, this whole conversation has been about incompletions and completions. So if incompletions are creating energy drains, we want to make sure, be committed to closing the circles of our day and not bringing today into tomorrow. We want to drive ourselves to results. That's another thing that has been a hard lesson for me. Relevant tasks and projects. Once you get here, once you're aware, like, wow, I am really wasting my time on silly things, you never go back. Once you see it, you don't go back. But it takes a minute to see it. So pay attention and ask, am I choosing a relevant project that actually drives results, or am I doing something different? And then finally, elevating from the minutia. This is my favorite sentence: what small completions will make the biggest impact on my business today? Those are your A priorities. That's your A priority, the small completions that will make the biggest difference in my day. Okay, so 3 strategies on that, and then we'll wrap. I want to just present to you the 90-minute sprint. This is the idea of knocking out as many small tasks as you possibly can in 90 minutes. I tend to compartmentalize what I'm doing. Sometimes I compartmentalize so well that I forget to get to my small tasks, so they don't fit into the little compartment that I've placed the bigger projects in. So I give myself a 90-minute sprint, and I just blow through as many tasks as I possibly can, and it feels amazing because you experience a very big degree of completions. I use a timer, I remove distractions. This is not for projects. That requires a different energetic intention, but the energy of this particular time block is focused, flat, fast, clip along, keep it going, cross it off. This is the energy of that 90-minute sprint. Then we've got scheduling your projects, which I define a project as 30+ minutes or more to complete. Again, using a timer, sinking into the project, one project at a time, having clarity on exactly how far I'm taking that project in that space of time, what tasks am I doing associated to that project. But the energy of this time block is focused, flowing, quiet, steady, thoughtful, and creative. Do you see the difference in the energies behind getting certain things done? If you're trying to fit project time into a sprint, you can't do it. The energy is just off and you won't be nearly as effective. The third strategy on this is the organizational day. This organizing is not working. You cannot start organizing your office, find something that you have to do and do it. You need to set that aside and keep organizing until you're done, until you get that closet done, right? So clearing out, cleaning up, creating space, streamlining systems and organization is what happens on this day. But the energy of this time block is also different than the other two. Precise decisions, big movement, purge the old, marathon versus sprint, make a dent. You are moving with a purpose and you're getting that organization done. Okay, Principle number 9 is the time mastery blueprint. This is all about making a time mastery blueprint unique to you. This is a big place where I start with my clients who are having trouble with incompletions and a lack of organization. And so this is a whole other conversation that I teach, but it really focuses on the fact that your time mastery blueprint must be organic to you, and we discover what that looks like inside of that discovery process. So this is something for you to snap a picture of if you would like to. It's a testimonial, but it speaks specifically to completions and reprioritizing and how it affects your business and your lifestyle. This was such a beautiful testimonial to the actual work that I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so any final comments? And thank you for giving me, I think maybe I went a few minutes over, but are there any final comments or questions that you'd like to contribute to the conversation? I'd love to hear some aha moments.
That was a lot of information and organized so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. You know, when we present ideas, we have to create an opening to be received, especially when there's such conceptual ideas like what we talked about today. We wrapped up with the tangibles, but so much of the upfront was very conceptual. And so that was creating the opening for you to dive in and recognize, where are my incompletions and what do I really need to take care of to experience a higher level of me. So thank you so much. I hope that you'll snap the QR code and come into my little world. I'd love to have you there. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.